This is a tough day for me. I apologize if I'm not as energetic as I usually am. Today's the day we hold a funeral for our beloved series, Little Big Planet. Today we gather with heavy hearts to bid farewell to our beloved series, Little Big Planet.
Little Big Planet journeyed with us through moments of joy, creativity, and wonder. Its departure leaves a void in our lives, yet its legacy will be in our hearts forever. Little Big Planet wasn't just a game series, it was a canvas upon which we painted our dreams. Through the whimsical landscapes we traversed to the intricate contraptions we crafted, it empowered us to unleash our creativity and forge bonds which transcended the digital world. Through its vibrant tapestry of levels, challenges, and characters, it fostered a community of dreamers and creators, united by a shared love of boundless exploration and ingenuity. Rest in peace, Little Big Planet. Look at this guy. He's cute, right? Don't act too soon, he's dead. Back during the PlayStation 3 days, Sony for one actually made games, but also cherished their characters, something you don't see today. Like, how many games have they released exclusively for the PlayStation 5? Like one. The console's in its twilight years now. They said it, not me. They wanted to be like the next Nintendo and have a whole cast of characters they could show and say, these are our characters. This inevitably led to the PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, Sony Smash Bros. It didn't do well. This game was charming and it looked fun, but it didn't look like much past another Smash Bros. Clone. I'm sure there was stuff to set this apart from the billion other Smash Bros. Clones, but I'll figure that out another day. This is a funeral. While people got Smash Bros. To see their favorite Nintendo characters beat the piss out of each other, I don't think many people were on the edge of their seats waiting for a fighting game crossover between Nathan Drake and Fat Princess. But I digress with this game. What I'm saying is, Sony at this time held their mascots to a very high standard, and nobody else more at this time than Sackboy from Little Big Planet. Yes, Little Big Planet was one of the flagship series during this generation, a cultural icon, dare I say. I know, I wouldn't believe it either. Unless you want to count Uncharted or The Last of Us as their flagship series during this generation, but these games don't have fun shapes and colors on the screen to keep me entertained, so I like Little Big Planet more. Little Big Planet was released in 2008 and developed by Media Molecule. The game is a puzzle platformer including its own short and sweet single-player campaign, but its main selling point was a level editor and community levels. This series is built upon user-generated content where you, the player, build the levels, similar to Mario Maker, but this game predates it, and also compared to Mario Maker, only like 80% of the user-generated levels here are garbage compared to Mario Maker's 98%. Similar to Childbirth, this game's tagline is play, create, share, which is, what you can do in this game. Why would they say it otherwise? Starting the game, you are introduced to the pod. The pod works as your gateway to the world of Little Big Planet, where you have this big PlayStation 3 controller in front of you. I always thought this was cute. Sackboy follows your movements on the controller, but considering his tiny stature, instead of using his thumbs to move around the thumbsticks, he has to use the force of his entire body. I remember as a kid always messing around with this, and yeah, looking at it now, it's not much besides a glorified menu screen. It's just a fun place to mess around in. And one second you're laughing, looking at him push the controller with all his strength, the next second you look down and, ha! It's real! Speaking of Sackboy, I love Sackboy. He's so funny and just look at him. He's a sack. A good friend of mine made a knitted Sackboy for me for my birthday, and I love him so much. I just wanted everyone to see. You can customize Sackboy in the game to pretty much anything you want. You can make him Solid Snake, Cultural Appropriation, and Kratos. But it isn't just costumes. You can change Sackboy's material, pants, shirt, hat, and make him literally whatever you want. I personally am a big fan of the pink material and shark hat. I think sharks are cool. You get customization items for Sackboy as collectibles and levels, which is such a good way of incentivizing you to explore the levels more. As collectibles, you can also find decorations and stickers, which can be placed around the levels because why not? Or be placed inside of your pod to make it feel more like a home. As a kid, I was always a big fan of games where you could design an area for yourself. My Igloo and Club Penguin went crazy. It also met a similar fate to Little Big Planet, but we'll get to that. So as a kid, I always had a lot of fun just messing around with my pod and making it whatever I wanted. And I've seen some pretty cool creations on the internet, my favorite being, from the pod you have access to 3 different planets, the single player campaign, to play user-generated levels, and your own level editor. Besides the community-made levels, this game's main meat and potatoes, not saying that again, was a single player campaign with actual good levels since, the people making them actually knew how to design games, unlike the 8-year-olds making community levels. Put that photo away. The single-player campaign's first world, like many other platformer games, is getting you adjusted to the basics of the game. The Gardens introduces you to the main mechanics of Sackboy's controls, like grabbing, using stickers to progress to a level, and the layer switching mechanic. Basically, the game is for the most part split between 3 different levels of separation: the background, middle layer, and front layer. And you can freely swap between whatever layer you need to progress to a level or just grab a collectible or something. This introduces parts in the levels where you must grab a platform or something to drag it between layers. My only real problem with this is that sometimes the depth perception can be a little bit funky because of this, and you'll sometimes miss specific objects or make a mistake with whatever layer it's supposed to be on. It's not really a huge problem, and you learn to adjust to it as you get further into the game, so it's not really bringing the game down at all. But also the game can switch between layers outside of your control, which can lead to problems, but it's not constant. My only other real issue with this game's controls is Sackboy's movement. It works perfectly fine, but I feel like sometimes Sackboy moves a little slow, and it doesn't always feel like you have full control over his movements. But honestly, as this game progresses, it utilizes his movements incredibly well, so it doesn't really bring the game down that much. The first area in this game is the previously mentioned gardens, and they work as a tutorial for this game, which can get kind of annoying as it feels just kind of stop and go, but when it's fun, it's very fun. My personal favorite things are the races that occasionally pop up where you must use physics to push down a thing with wheels down a slope. It's cool, unless you accidentally jump off of it, and then you have to walk the rest of the race. I think the game really picks up in the second world, the Savannas, where the game allows you to just have fun with the levels, and it leads to some really good levels. Levels. Then you have worlds like the Wedding. The Wedding? What? This world is based upon the Mexican tradition of Day of the Dead, and it's just really fun, and the art style is themed around Mexican art, which is, it's cool. I'm starting to run out of ways to call something cool. I should probably open a thesaurus. And the rest of the worlds in this game are each based off of some culture, like my favorite ones being the islands, which is stylized after Japan. And before you ask, no, I'm not one of those Americans who says, I'm gonna move to Japan when I'm an adult, because I'm not scared to give my opinion on the age of consent. Overall, the original LittleBigPlanet is a very fun game, and I haven't even mentioned the art style yet. The art style is made out of all arts and crafts, and this has always been one of my favorite art styles in games because I'm just so happy whenever I look at it. The game's art style is most comparable to Yoshi's Woolly World, and I really love it. And the music as well, it uses a lot of flutes. Flutes are cool. The original LittleBigPlanet was incredibly successful and beloved when it first came out, so of course it got a PSP version, never mind. LittleBigPlanet on the PSP is very similar to the PlayStation 3 version, having very similar levels and whatnot, but they did have to make some slight gameplay variations to get it work on the handheld. I feel like I've seen one of these on a police report. This game also has its worlds based upon places around the world. Fun. This one's cool, I like it, but I don't really have a nostalgic connection to this one like I do with its console counterpart, and I feel like any kid that owned a PSP was behind the scenes a Satan worshipper, but I'm sure I would have liked this one. In other words, this looks cool, something deserving of legalist punishment. In January of 2011 came the long-awaited sequel to the original LittleBigPlanet, LittleBigPlanet 2. This is the game I have the most nostalgic connection with. I remember messing around in the level editor for hours as a kid in this game. Although with the countless hours I spent trying to create levels here, the most I did was just place a million blocks around the place. I never quite grasped what makes a good level. Still don't. What's cool about the level editor in this game is that it greatly expands your abilities and what levels you're able to make. In the first game you could only really make platforming levels, the majority of which were, how do I say this kindly, awful since they were made by an 8-year-old. Hey, put that photo away. Again. You can now create levels based on racing, more in-depth puzzles, and even short RPG levels. That's sick. The gameplay and controls are very similar to the original game, with some tweaks to set the game apart, mostly just refining how he feels, and I will say, he feels much nicer here. And the levels aren't just relegated to mostly platforming like the first game, this game also focuses on puzzle levels, RPGs, and racing, which is a really cool thing for a sequel to do that not enough do. Again, my levels mostly consisted of object spam, but I remember playing some pretty crazy levels that must have took literal hours for the creators to make. Seriously, it was impressive. The levels in this game are all for the most part themed around a specific thing in each world. The first world is based after Da Vinci's art, and I think that's really cool, and as you progress through the game you visit even more places, like a world based after the Victorian era and a mental asylum. What? Oh man, I gotta go to one of these.
This is not like the LittleBigPlanet 2 level.
I have a huge nostalgic connection to LittleBigPlanet 2. Like I said before, I played this game for hours as a kid. I played hundreds of community levels, made not very good levels in the level editor, but I still made them. As a kid, I remember being obsessed with the LittleBigPlanet series, and it was almost solely because of this game. Like, I did play the first one, but I never became truly invested with the series until I played this game. I also remember the PS Vita LittleBigPlanet game, which was released soon after LittleBigPlanet 2 released. I never owned a PS Vita because, well, I would say I had standards, but the only game I ever played for my 3DS was Pokemon X. I actually like that game, never mind. Anyway, I remember my older brother owning a PS Vita, but also owning the LittleBigPlanet PS Vita game. I remember touching it like twice and begging for a PS Vita so I could play LittleBigPlanet on whatever the opposite of the big screen is. And looking at the game now, I mean, it's cool. I don't have much to say about this one similar to the PSP version, but I will admit, it's cool and fun, but again, the PS Vita, I feel like anyone who owned one of these instead of a 3DS is in prison by now. Although I will say, anyone who owned a 3DS is in a mental institution by now. Another LittleBigPlanet game that also came out around this time was LittleBigPlanet Karting, and I also played a lot of this game when I was a kid. I never preferred this game compared to, say, Mario Kart. Even as a little kid, I felt Mario Kart was much more polished, but I remember when I needed some more flavor that wasn't just the back of Mario's head, I popped in this game, and I remember it being a lot of fun. And playing this game now, yeah, it is still a lot of fun. It's a very smooth racer with lots of fun tracks to play and playable characters from previous LittleBigPlanet games. It's like PlayStation Mario Kart. What sets this game apart from the trillion other mascot racing games is that this game features a track editor to fit in with the rest of the LittleBigPlanet games as main gimmick. I never touched this as a kid, I can only imagine what horrid tracks I would have made with it, but I probably would have had a lot of fun with it back then. But I did see some sick community tracks to race on, so clearly many people had fun with this. The critical reputation of this game is not looked at very favorably by the general community, which is understandable. Most reviewers compliment this game on its good track design and visuals, which are my favorite things, but also many people think the game can feel super basic and doesn't feel very polished. I personally think the game feels fine, but what the hell does my opinion matter? I like Sonic. I just find this game to be a very interesting footnote in PlayStation history. You can really tell that Sony viewed Sackboy as their Mario, with having multiple games released on multiple different platforms, racing spin-offs, and the whole PlayStation All-Stars fighting game thing I mentioned at the start. You know, when they treated their series like actual franchises. They don't do that anymore. I also remember around this time messing around with the LittleBigPlanet Minecraft DLC built into the PlayStation 3 version of Minecraft. The music is very loud here and it blasts in your ears, but the builds look cool, so why should I complain? I only have impaired hearing and have the constant ringing of flutes in my ear now. In 2014, LittleBigPlanet 3 was released, and I'll get to that whole mess in a second. In the time between LittleBigPlanet 2 and LittleBigPlanet 3, the studio had switched from Media Molecule to new studio Sumo Digital. I remember being super excited for this game's release, and it was one of the first games I got with my PlayStation 4, along with Angry Birds Star Wars. Great. But unlike pretty much all the other games in the series, I never really got into LittleBigPlanet 3. Like at all. I could tell that something was different about this game compared to the others, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But now it's much more clear why I never got into this game as much as the others, and that's because so many of the things that I loved about the original games were significantly worse here or gone entirely. My favorite parts of the older games are the story mode levels because they were fun and creative, but looking at the story mode levels in this game, I just feel kinda sad. Something about the presentation here just feels super basic, and the levels themselves don't always have a theme that goes along with the others, and they just feel way too short or way too long and drawn out. And I just don't remember any of the levels in this game compared to the previous two games, so it's clear why I didn't like this game as much as the others. The story mode is also much shorter than the other games, which would be fine if we were given a substantial amount of replayable content, but I just can't bring myself to care enough to replay any of these levels. What I got most out of this game was what most other people got out of this game, which was the community levels and the level editor. To this game's credit, I found the quality of the levels made by the community here so much better than the previous games, and I think that goes to show how much better done the level editor is here. Like, I remember playing some crazy online levels here. Like, damn, someone made that. But honestly, yeah, this game was never really my thing. I feel like the whole gimmick was getting kind of repetitive and old by this point, and the game didn't really do anything to make it stand out. And this game was pretty unpolished at its release. Like, I never had very many issues with it, but it had horrible server issues and could be painfully slow at times.
I'm still here.
After this game's somewhat critical failure compared to the rest of the games, the LittleBigPlanet series went pretty much dormant for a while. I guess we did get a random mobile game released around this time, which, it exists. Run Sackboy Run is an endless runner where you play as Sackboy. What the hell do you want me to say about this game? Don't ask me how many hours I've played this game. And even though the LittleBigPlanet series didn't have much going on around this time, it was just kind of existing, and Sony slowly moving on to bigger franchises to milk, the community for these games was still going pretty strong. Thousands of creative community levels for LittleBigPlanet 3 were made, and like I said before, I cannot stress enough how impressive the community work for this game was. It wasn't until early into the release of the PlayStation 5 where the next LittleBigPlanet game was released, LittleBigPlanet 4 Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Oh. I got this game alongside my PlayStation 5 and had a ton of fun with it, but was anyone really asking for a 3D platformer that has none of the elements of the LittleBigPlanet series instead just delegated to Sackboy, and not having any community creation whatsoever? Although, I would be lying if I said I didn't think this game was actually really awesome. It had been a while since a big brand new 3D platformer had been released when this game came out, and I mean it was even nominated for and won a few awards. In this game, it's extremely creative. Everything being based around arts and crafts in a 3D space lends itself to some really fun and creative level design. It would have been cool if this game utilized any of the PlayStation 5's features, but they had to release it on the PlayStation 4 too, which I think severely downgraded this game. My favorite part is how the controller freaks out whenever you hit an enemy. My hands started to tingle after I played this game for like 2 hours. But whatever, it's still a fun, replayable game, so really, who cares about the problems? I really like the levels in this game. They're all long but don't feel drawn out, and have plenty of branching paths, and look, they look fun. Except I don't like Zoom Zoom. His voice makes me mad.
Hello! I am Zoom Zoom.
Shut the fuck up. My only other complaint, if you can even call it one, is that compared to the previous LittleBigPlanet games, the art style here just feels a little bit basic and boring. Like, don't get me wrong, it still has a cute and charming art style, but comparing it to, say, the first LittleBigPlanet game, it just feels like something's missing. I got it. This game also does not take very long to beat at all. Like, I beat it in around 2 sittings. Granted, I no-lifed this game and I played it for a few hours whenever I got home from school, but I can't imagine this game lasting a kid much longer than 2 weeks. Although, to give this game some credit, there are plenty of costumes and collectibles to collect around the level, so if you want to go and collect all of them, then it will take you some time. And it's not like any of the other LittleBigPlanet games had very long campaigns either, but the thing with this one is that this game was sold solely to be a single-player game rather than the other ones, which had hundreds of community-made levels to play afterward. This game obviously didn't have the staying power of any of the other LittleBigPlanet games through community support, as well, it had none, which really didn't help the LittleBigPlanet series stay in the public eye for much longer. And really, all people were asking when this game came out is, well, when is LittleBigPlanet 4 coming out? And it never did. On April 24th of 2024, it was announced on the official LittleBigPlanet Twitter account that the LittleBigPlanet 3 servers would be shut down indefinitely. Thousands of levels made by the community, gone. People's creations they spent dozens of hours working on, all gone in an instant. The server shut down due to ongoing technical issues, which eventually got so hard to maintain that they decided to shut down the servers indefinitely. It clearly wasn't worth it to keep the servers up. They weren't making much money from the game anymore, but it's incredibly sad that it needed to end this way. No formal celebration of the LittleBigPlanet series, just the servers were there one day and gone the next. The only real way to save the series is to release a traditional 4th game so players can have a fresh start with new servers, but not only does this not guarantee the revival of the series, but also Sony has clearly changed their outlook on releasing games, as now they choose to rarely release games unless it has a big open world and story. They clearly have no room for a silly little platformer in their lineup anymore, and I think LittleBigPlanet deserves a proper burial.
You know, with how much I say it's over, it's weird to say that it's actually over this time. You know, I would try and lock myself in a closet, but I think I'm mature enough to not lock myself in a closet and cry over a 15-plus-year-old franchise dying with a click of a button. But thousands of hours of people have been wasted. All this passion gone in an instant.